Ask the Podcast Coach for April 8th, 2023.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, and apparently Dave hasn't turned off his notifications on machine number 2 from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Good to be back on a Saturday morning. Big thanks to Fuzz Martin filling in for me. Last week, I made it down to Kansas City, saw my mother-in-law, made it back, had a travel hangover, all in the same weekend. I missed you guys. Good to be back, and happy Easter to those celebrating that this weekend.
Yeah, it's weird because I had to do, for whatever reason, we did a Zoom thing for my church last night. So today feels like Sunday in a weird, it's because, or I don't know what it is. I don't know what day it is, but it's Easter weekend. So, what was interesting is Fuzz actually came, it was BYOM. He brought his own mug.
Oh, nice.
And that way, we had the awesome coffee pour.
Yeah,
so,
speaking of that, why don't you support me?
There we go.
I haven't drank coffees in 2 weeks.
There you go. And of course, that awesome coffee pour is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. If you want to look good, in fact, I just saw a thing. Somebody did a Twitter thread, I believe is what they're called. But some guy, he had like 1.5 million downloads, and he made a big point of have good-looking artwork because they see you before they hear you. And the great thing about Mark is not only is he an award-winning graphic artist, but he's also a podcaster, so you don't have to do that whole like it's like a radio show, but no, he knows what a podcast is. In fact, he's going to listen to your show. He's going to check out your current website if you have one. He wants to make sure that your brand is in alignment with your message, so that from the minute they see you, from the minute they click play, everything is all in alignment and you end up with the maximum effect that you're looking for with your podcast. If you want to go over to podcastbranding.co, you can see a bunch of his work over there, and there's actually a little scrolling, what do you call that thing where the thing goes by? I'm not done. What do you call that thing that scrolls?
Ticker. It's called the ticker.
Is it a ticker?
I think so.
You can see it.
No.
It's that.
Carousel.
Yes, he has a carousel of artwork that goes by. So
I'm not done.
You're not done. I'm not done. I'm like at the Oscars. I'm like, no. And I want to thank God and country and my wife. I want to thank my wife. Yeah. So we want to thank Mark over at podcastbranding.co. So thank you, Mark. And
so you don't have to follow the script every single time. Big thanks to our friend Dan Lefebvre over there. Based on a True Story podcast at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. Best Patreon supporter ever, Dan Lefebvre, because in March, Dan, I am sorry. We've been all over the place. Dave took 2 weeks off. I took a week off. We've been tweeting your stuff. I appreciate you and what you do. If you head out to that site now, this week, Assassination of Jesse James.
Ooh.
If you want to check that out. Yeah, it's got some good stuff. Dan is doing some really good work right now. If you need another podcast to listen to, check it out, based on a true story podcast.com.
There we go.
I'm going to scream that the rest of the show. I'm not done yet.
Well, since we kind of were talking about artwork, yeah. I saw a message here in, that's interesting. I went to hit a marker, and I think I hit pause on the Roadcaster. If you hit I did not see there's a little, on the Roadcaster, you have your time. So we've been going 4 minutes and 32 seconds, and next to it is a little red record button, and if you click on the actual digits, so I see where it's 440, if I click on that, it makes a marker, which is great for editing, but it turns out if you click the little red circle next to it, it will pause it. I did not know that. So anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch, somebody was asking about artwork. They said, how much text is too much text for a cover, and which is better? Say you're in a car. Wait, hold on. Say you're a car engineer, and your podcast is about how to make your car beat. That's what it says. To make your car beat every other car on the drag strip. Which is better? How to have the fastest car on the drag strip. That's positive. Learn why you don't have the fastest car on the drag strip. That's kind of negative. Learn why you keep losing on race day. That's very negative. Pain is a greater motivator than pleasure, so I postulate. Ooh, I think we have the word of the day.
Postulate.
Postulate. The second two possibly are better. And what amount of text is too much for a cover? Should you not put your motto on your cover? And that was the one that I was like, oh, that's an easy, that made it a very easy answer. In my opinion, no, unless your motto is just do it. I don't know, because for me, at least, the only thing that should be on your artwork, besides something that explains what the podcast is about, is the name of your show in giant text, so that when it gets shrunk down to 150 pixels, you can still read it. I see people will put their name where it's, Spring Thinking with Bill and Janice or something like that. And I'm always like, yeah, I don't even think we really need, what people don't realize is when you set up your show, it's going to ask you for your author. Well, that's you. So put your name. So for Ask the Podcast Coach, it says Dave Jackson, Jim Cullison. Does anyone ever call you Jimmy, by the way?
Yeah, my wife actually calls me Jimmy from time to time when she's mad at me.
Because today when I was setting up the Twitter space and I went to start to type Jim, it said Jimmy. And I was like, I don't think I've ever called Jim Cullison Jimmy.
No, you never called me Jimmy, but you can call me Jimmy if you want. That's okay. It's okay. Jimbo, James, Jim, Jimmy. Those are the
there you go.
4 things I'll answer to.
Excellent. And
that was useless. Useless limbo.
I've always just said put the name in giant letters, because everything else, the author, so the name, your name's going to be right there, and have a tagline. So if it's, whatever, fast cars, why how to win every day at the drag strip or whatever like that.
The font kind of matters too, right? I mean, the font you're choosing, not all fonts are the easiest to read. And so if depending on, and that doesn't mean it's the wrong font to use. You just,
right.
This is the art thing. This is where Mark does stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? How did you come up with that? Because it's awesome. And I don't have any of those. I don't have any of those chops. I'm like, oh, okay, good enough. And oftentimes, especially in the early days of podcasting, you saw people make album art with paint,
right?
And paint has 37 fonts in it, and so we are all using, and they're not good fonts,
no.
Right? They're not good ones.
You don't like Comic Sans?
And the I don't think most people know how to use. I mean, the art of using the way you use your font in advertising, and the way the font itself becomes part of what you're doing. It becomes part of the art, right in it. And it too can display. I mean, think if you had a military podcast, you would want to use one of those military fonts, right? They have you think of MASH and the fonts they have on there. So it is one, I don't, I think, yeah, you want to be able to read it. How much, like your shirt, Dave, all the stuff that's on your shirt. Let's just think about that for a second, right?
Yeah.
Probably a little too much to have.
Oh, yeah. It's way
right?
too much.
Yeah, schoolpodcasting.com. Across. Now I've got I'm a blood donor, and so I gave to the American Red Cross. You see this symbol right off. Generally, most people know where to go when they see that, and then below it says American Red Cross. Is that enough, right? I mean, that works for them. The question is do you like it? I think this is where it comes down to it. Do you like it? Are you proud of it? Because if you are and it makes sense, you'll put it everywhere. If you're not, or it's not good, people will tell you. That's a boat go. I don't know about that art, so I don't know.
We have the word of the day is kicking off. Larry says, I'm definitely starting a new show with postulate in the title. Chris's motto is just postulate it. Very good. Coming back to artwork, Dan says, I had it recommended to put the slogan of on my cover art, but I also make sure to keep it super simple so it gets the point across without text. I think that's the key. I was watching a YouTube channel, and they're talking about making thumbnails, and they said the thumbnail should be or not the text on the thumbnail should kind of be optional. Like, people should know by whatever it is on the artwork, like what the YouTube video is about. And I was like, interesting. So,
I think the logo question on a shirt, we have two different, you know. Do you do a small version of it in the upper left? That's really traditional. Or like you got the whole front of the t-shirt is being used. Which is better? I don't know. It's a really good question.
In reality, because my shirt says I help podcasters, it's what I do. And that's really, I made it in giant letters so people would not have a hard time reading it. But then I squeezed schoolofpodcasting.com underneath of it. And if I had I think I got this from whoever had shirts on sale. So that could be Sticker Mule. It could be TeePublic, who probably, I don't think either one of those have printing on the back. And consequently, if I were to do these again, I would put the School of Podcasting and come on the back and just have I help podcasters. It's what I do on the front. So we'll see.
Would you consider putting a QR code on the front? And so, like, if you're talking with somebody and they were like, you're like, just take a picture.
If I was at a conference, I could see doing that. There we go.
Maybe on the sleeve, maybe the QR code's on the sleeve. So it's not like you're, like, hey, take a picture of me, right? But I don't know.
Well, that and my gut would stretch it out, so the QR code probably
maybe it would maybe it'd cover it. Maybe that's you just use the QR code.
There's a wrinkle, yes. DR says I've got the title of my next show, of course, which is "Welcome to I'm Not Done" with Dave Jackson.
Yeah. I'm not done. Shouted during an ad. I love that. When your own music cuts you off. I'm not done.
Maybe the text can be with less space and more kind of a design. I love the SOP design. Yeah, this was literally, it's probably Sticker Mule or TeePublic. On occasion, they will say, hey, special for the next X amount of days. T-shirts are $9. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go make a design. So this was kind of a little catchphrase I was throwing around for a while, so I threw it on it too. I need one that just says, because most of my School of Podcasting ones have the little shield thingy, the crest, shall we say, and I just need one with just the letter School of Podcasting. I think that would be cool. It's one I don't have yet. So, but if you're not on the Sticker Mule email list, they're always running specials on. Right now they have magnets. I think I got these stickers, again, showcasing the awesome work of one Mark from podcastbranding.co. And they're always like dirt cheap. So I don't buy anything there unless it's not even that expensive when it's not on sale. But they always on occasion like, hey, whatever, 50 stickers for $4, and they're also not the weenies that then charge you $47 for shipping. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the stickers are $2 and the shipping's $38. You're like, yeah, never mind. So Uncle Marv says I have a T-shirt with a QR code on the back, small pocket logo on the front. See, that's what I need. T-shirts are cool, but I kind of miss the days when there was a pocket here, because then you could easily put a logo on that bad boy and have a place for your phone. So that's always fun. So
nerdiest thing ever, though. By the way,
that is. And then you get
like the kids are gonna come down hard on you for that one.
Yeah.
Seriously, Dad, a pocket? Come on, pockets are so 1993.
That's it. Dennis wants to know, what the heck are we using for this stream? We are using StreamYard. If you go to, here, I will put a link, I think, in the, let's see if my text expander, yay! I love Text Expander because I just typed in hashtag StreamYard and it spit out my StreamYard affiliate link. StreamYard is it, and you can do fun things like, I can share slides. So here's that. I can. This is where things get really weird. Hold on, Jim. Okay.
Put us back. I can't talk that way.
Yeah, I could if there were. I've seen people, because you can now make your own layout. And I think it was Michael Stelzner, where what he does is he doesn't like take himself off the screen. So I could come in and like, if Jim answers a question, I could do this. And so what Michael did was he just made himself a little smaller, like about 15%. Just it makes the guest a little bigger. And then he clicks, one of these layouts. So I don't know that this, because there's only just the two of us. Okay. Yeah. Kind of like this. and then he would go back to this. But it was different where this was the guest. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so that way, so if we, it always seems like,
it'd be great. And I think you can make this way. So yeah, like this, but then you can switch between the two of them without having to switch switch us back for a second.
Hold on.
So today, like say we're in that mode, right? And sorry, video or audio
people.
Folks.
Yeah.
This is all visual, but in other words, so you could make me big without moving me and then make yourself big without moving you, if that makes sense, right? So you can flip, but you could make that, I think you can make that on StreamYard now.
Yeah.
That extra screen and then flip between the two of them. I find it a little jarring sometimes to see all these video things moving around, right? On StreamYard, where it's, you're flipping and swapping. I do some of that on some of the Gallup stuff that we do. I think the other thing I'd like, or I need to, and I haven't even messed around necessarily with these yet, but the 5-person view on this is terrible. It's 4 is perfect. 5 is awful.
Yeah.
And so is maybe coming up with a better 5-person view. I need to mess around with these. They just put them out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Chris says the new StreamYard layout function is great. You can also do guest destinations. So, this is interesting. So your guest, if I understand this right, in the same way that I'm streaming now to my Facebook and Twitch and YouTube and all this other, your guest could go in and do the same thing. So it's double the fun for that.
And I probably should be, we could dual broadcast this on my YouTube channel, right? Which would make more sense.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and then Stefan says, if you pay for StreamYard, you can stream to multiple destinations. Yep. I'm on the Uber Pro plan or whatever. So it's a pretty slick tool. If you're looking for free, the only thing I've ever thought of that I was like, is because I bought StreamYard a year, which was not cheap, but I use it every Saturday, so it's worth it. And but the only other thing I would consider, because I do have a Mac now, would be Ecamm. Mm-hmm. But that also looks like there's a bit of a learning curve when I look at all the different things. And StreamYard is really, for as powerful as it is pretty user friendly. It's usually just drag and drop stuff. Larry says I was recently jumped ship from Riverside to StreamYard. That's my question. Here's the thing: Riverside got, I think it was 2.1 million. They got some sort of grant, and they started advertising everywhere. And the people that I used to know that used it all the time but didn't have a problem, I've not heard them talk about it recently. And I'm like, And I have had people go, what's an alternative to Riverside? So I don't know how it's working over there. I always say whatever you use, whether it's Clean Feed, Squadcast, Zoom, always have 2 things recording. Larry says it had nothing to do with the fact that they dropped my sponsorship. Brad Miller said I moved from Riverside to Ecamm. Yeah, because I've always said if you got a Mac, Ecamm all the way. I don't know anybody that has a holy cow, Ecamm ate my, episode story.
Not that it can't happen.
Yeah, not that it can't. Always, yeah. I mean, the day I had Zoom eat one, I was like, really? Because I record thousands of things on Zoom, different meetings and coaching and things like that. And we got done with this one thing, and all of a sudden it was like, wait, what? And I've had that happen before where you have to like right click and open this with that. And I had one I had to send to Zoom support, and they were able to revive it. And this one, I sent it to them, and they were like, yeah, we're sorry. It's just not, it's not coming back.
They do. Just this week, I recorded a call on Zoom, and I'd sent the link to some folks, and then they were like, I can't, it doesn't work. So I check it. Sure enough, I go back, and all my Zoom recordings are gone. Like gone. And I was like, guys. So I contacted our IT group, and they're like, yeah, Zoom's having some communication problems at the moment. Just hang tight. They'll be back. Sure enough, about an hour later, they all came back. So they weren't lost, but yeah, you've got to, you got to practice good backup for all those things as well. As an example, we're recording now. It's recording to StreamYard. It's also recording to YouTube. Now that, depending on your plan, you have the Super Pro plan, so you could record in 1080 if you wanted to. Pull it down from StreamYard in 1080 with with the audio not being compressed. And if you choose the option, you can have us recording separately. We're not doing that this morning, but you could do that if you wanted to on those pro plans. I use the $10 plan. It's $720. It's also going to YouTube, but YouTube's compressed, right? So you're getting not full, maybe full video fidelity, definitely not audio fidelity. So you are getting a compressed version of the audio on YouTube for sure. So, but that's two places. You should never think, should always be thinking about, even with your recording and even your long-term recording. Like if I record it to StreamYard, it should immediately be going somewhere else immediately. Cause that one time you go back to get it and you're like, StreamYard's down, or, that file got corrupted. Doesn't happen very often, but you got to back that stuff up too.
I tried their separate recording thing that they do here on StreamYard with me and Daniel, and I pulled it down, and about every 5 words there was this kind of thing going on, and I'm like, what the heck? So then I luckily I always again have 2 things recording, so I download my files from my Roadcaster and it's not there, and I was like, okay, because I noticed it's like beta, and I was like, that means don't make this the sole recording of whatever it is you're doing. So always have 2. That's all I can say. The other thing here, Chris said, Riverside had too many issues with audio drift for me to stick around. It makes my head hurt to think if I did video that I would have separate video and separate audio. That sounds like a sinking nightmare of just making sure everything lined up. Kyle said the new version of Squadcast made some good upgrades to their service. Yeah, they did. They have a thing where you can say what show is this interview for, so that kind of comes in handy. Chris Stone says Ecamm does interviews up to 5 people and multiple destinations as well. Has been solid for me. Again, I don't know anybody that's had a bad word to say about Ecamm. Here's the bad thing about Ecamm. I don't think they have an affiliate program. They used to, and I don't think they do anymore. There's a bit of a learning curve versus StreamYard, but way more functionality. Yeah, I know Laria Petrucci over at Livestream Pros, been doing video forever, is a big Ecamm person. And then Coach Dave, StreamYard has been pretty good. I have trouble from time to time with browser platforms. Not sure if it's still true, but it used to be Chrome dominant. Yeah, as far as I know, I always recommend Chrome.
Let's be clear, Chromium, right? The engine behind Chrome, not just Chrome. Right. You can use Edge. You can use any of those browsers that are Chrome based. Now, saying that, a lot of the browsers, you think of Edge being the primary one. Edge is Chromium based. They're adding so much to their own browser that the engine is the same in theory, but there could be some things that they're doing to the browser that may or may not make it compatible. So your mileage might vary. Chrome, they almost always recommend Chrome as the browser, not the engine. But again, I use Edge on Mac on a fairly regular basis on StreamYard, and it's just fine.
And speaking of always having a duplicate, last time I looked, I had a red light and we were recording.
Oh.
And now we don't.
No StreamYard.
No, we're recording here. My
No, I mean the Roadcaster. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, so I'll hit record. I don't know what is.
Now, in theory, you still have 2 copies of this, Dave. You have StreamYard's copy of it and one on YouTube as a minimum. Are we going to Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those other locations?
Yeah. We're going to, yeah.
I think Facebook, I wouldn't use it, but I think Facebook has a version of it too that they're streaming there.
Here's the weird thing about this. I just cleared a bunch of stuff off that card. And it's saying I have 0 hours left on the card. So that's why it's not recording. I ran out of space. That's a weird one.
Or maybe it was formatted incorrectly. It's possible.
Something. Yeah. Kyle says Discord or Clean Feed are good options when you want to do audio only. Clean Feed is more podcaster friendly. Yeah, I know the No Agenda Show for a long time. I think they still do use Clean Feed. The thing I was surprised, I used Libsyn Connect, which is Libsyn's new, for lack of a better phrase, Squadcast. I'm sure they love it when I say that. But I was surprised because it works. It's fine. It's super simple. And I still use Squadcast, said the Libsyn guy. And the reason for it is I like having a I'm sure it's low version video, but the fact that I can see my person, it aids in the communication process. I didn't think it would make that much of a deal. And we did one, Daniel and I did one on Libsyn Connect. And the fact that I couldn't see him, I was like, it's just one of those things where maybe if I never had done anything where I could see the person, it would be fine. But I was used to seeing the person from this on StreamYard and from Squadcast, that when I went to not being able to see the guest, I was like, this would take a little getting used to. So it's not horrible. It was fine, but you just get a better idea of, sometimes you'll see me back here rummaging through something and to like stretch out a bit as Dave figures out, what's going on. And that's where the added bonus of video helps.
Well, what's the right one? The right one is the one that works best for you.
For you. Bingo. Exactly. Yeah. What's the best exercise? The one you do. Yes.
The one, I went out for a walk yesterday. I got winded walking downhill, and I thought, I need to I should probably do this a little bit more often.
I had a friend in from out of town, and I've known him since I was in the 6th grade, and we always used to walk to this one store. And we walked there, and I don't remember it being this far away. My Roadcaster Pro, Coach Dave says, not recording when hitting record, fixed temporarily with reboots, fixed more permanently when I swap memory cards. Yeah, I just took out and put in the memory card because when I upgraded the Roadcaster Pro last week, for some reason, that little program you run to pull files off of it would not pull files off of it. It kept crashing. I probably should have just rebooted, but anyway. Andrea says Zencastr has options to record audio only, and you can have video as well. Yeah, it's pretty flexible. Here's the fun thing. I feel bad about Zencastr is when they launched, they had a drift problem, and everybody in the world talked about it. And I feel bad because I'm sure it's fixed, but every time I hear Zencastr, I'm like, I'm not sure. It's that first impression thing. Here we go. We use Todd says we use the new stage channel on Discord, and for audio, it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to Jim's statement, which one is the best one? The one that works for you. Brad says I'm doing a recording with a guest in Zimbabwe on Ecamm. I'll be interested to see how that works. I once was interviewed by a guy, and he said, "Look, I'm in Africa, so we're going to drop this call a lot." And he goes, "But I'll re-ask the question. We'll go for another probably 5-10 minutes. It'll drop the call. I will call you back." We were on Skype at the time. This was forever ago. Then exactly what happened. And he'd be like, I'd be talking, all of a sudden, boop, boop, and he'd be gone. He'd call back, and he's like, all right, hold on. Let's go back to the last question. And it was just so kind of like, he just did it in a way like, this is what's going to happen. It's not a big deal. Don't freak out. We'll just pick up where we left off. And we did. And it was, but he just explained that where he lived in Africa, the internet was just horrible. And so you kind of have to just be ready for that. Chris says, when was the last time you updated your Roadcaster? It would have been a week ago. I think it was. I'd have to check. Well, since I'm not recording now, I can do that. System, information.
It's been nice podcasting with you, Dave. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you. My firmware, my firmware is up to date. So I think it's probably the card. Which, when I think about it,
listen, with memory cards, there can be order of operation problems. There can be pulling the cards, especially if you format them in Windows. If you pull it too early, it doesn't have all the things it needs to be alive. I mean, there's just a lot of things I just don't like, and I know they do it because it's small and it's handy. I do not like a memory card form factor. I think they're just too easy to get bent or dropped, or they slide underneath the couch, or it's just, I don't like that form factor. I'd much rather have that thing writing to a M.2 SSD drive, and then have a network connection out. I get it. I get while they're doing it, but I'd much rather have that out.
I'd rather have an SD card, not a micro SD card.
Well, yeah. Yeah. That's I don't even like that size. That's the SD size.
Those are the ones that are the size of your thumbnail, where the micro SD is the size of your pinky fingernail.
I feel like you blow on those things and the data flies off of it. Like, I just don't like them. I don't feel good. I know photographers and such use those all the time, but that's where I always hear the problems. I took it out of my camera and I put it in my thing in my computer, and then it didn't work, and I lost the data, whatever. Those give me the jeebies. I
found a new pet peeve of mine. I actually wrote a blog post on this. I was listening to Mayim Bialik, I think is her last name, or Blylick or something. Amy from The Big Bang Theory. Blossom if you're old. And she was interviewing Wolowitz. I just know their characters' names from The Big Bang Theory. 2-hour podcast, right? And if you don't know, she's actually a something scientist. She's super smart. And so while everybody else was acting on the show, she actually knew what she was talking about. And she's really into mental health and blah, blah, blah. So it's Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is the name of her podcast. I listened to 13 minutes of it, and it poked the bear so bad that I was like, and I went back and got a timer. And in the first 13 minutes, Jim, what percentage of her show was advertising?
Oh, in the first 13 minutes?
First 13 minutes.
90%.
That's a little high. It was bad, but it wasn't that 34%. Okay. Because radio is 18 minutes, according to the one article I found. 18 minutes out of 60, which is 30%, and this was 34. But here's the thing that was bad about it, in my opinion, is like at the beginning of the show, we do 2 ads.
Yes. I was going to say, what do you think our percentage is during?
I'd have to look because we do basically 2 minutes within the first 5 minutes, and then we go sometimes an hour before we get to our awesome supporters. But here's the thing that got me. Yeah, she's a neuroscientist. It's Mayim Bialik, and it was ad number 1. And Jim, I'm going to guess what ad it was. Just pick an advertiser.
Audible.
Oh, you're close, but no.
Hold on. Some mattress.
See, you're going for the classics. I was dying for an Audible ad. It was BetterHelp and Athletic Greens. And
Athletic Greens is aggressive right now.
Yeah, and again, we're not bashing the sponsor because we need the Athletic Greens and we need these people because it's I think it was $2 billion or whatever. But she did 3 ads. And that's what
Post-Red Live or
Post-Red Live. I at least on the video it was. No, actually, I take this back. They were probably inserted later.
Okay,
but it was a case of like, hey, let me tell you about Casper mattress, yada yada yada.
30-second ads, 60-second ads. What do you think? 2 minutes?
I think they were a minute. Okay. So, but what got me is, so after the first ad, you're like, hey, look, she has ads. And then you go, of course she does, because she's got, already has, whatever, 2 million likes on this thing. Then she goes into the second ad. Hey, let me tell you about Athletic Greens. And I'm like, okay. So then there's a thing in my voice that was like, okay, well, she'll be back. The first one was like, oh, yeah, of course she has ads. Second one was like, okay, well, if I just sit through this one, she'll come back. When she launched into the third ad, that's when I was like, sorry. And that's when I'm like, if somebody's going to waste my time, it's going to be me. And that's when I grabbed my little timer. I'm like, let's go back to the beginning. And every time they run an ad, because they started off with a pre-roll ad, then they did like their yuck cottage cheese discussion about who cares. And then, and I think it's her husband. John, if not, who knows who they never introduce like who this guy is. It's just John. And then they spent a lot of time interviewing or introducing the guest. And then she did my favorite, which is she brought the guest on and then explained how they knew each other. And I was like, you just said that in the introduction. So it was just one of those where I really like her. I that's the one thing I thought was so cool. She was totally like no makeup, just like, it's me. I woke up, threw on my glasses, got a hoodie on, and I'm going to interview my friend. And I was like, that's cool. Now, when she interviewed Dustin Hoffman, not so much. She had a nice blazer, some jewelry on. But for me, I now can say 34% is when I go, that's too many ads.
Couldn't you just 30 through that? And
I could have.
As soon as I hear an ad on most podcasts, I listen to This Week or Windows Weekly, Leo Laporte, right? And he's got 4 minutes of ads in the very beginning. His ads, his host read ads are super long. His pre-roll ads are tight because they're recorded, right? So I know they're 30 seconds. So I know he's got 30. And then I get right to his, it's like clockwork. I get right to the beginning. And then his host read ads, I'll listen to the first couple seconds of it just to know, like, okay, who's he talking? Who are his folks now? And then boop, 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 4 times. Usually that gets me to the end.
Well, here's the thing. Normally, I can't listen to podcasts at work because I'm troubleshooting. My brain is
right. Yeah.
But there are some podcasts. I've now made a playlist in my phone called Radio-esque, meaning this is stuff that I can have on in the background. I don't need to take notes on this. So this is a perfect example. It's a celebrity interviewing another celebrity. And I was like, if I walk out of the room for 10 minutes and come back, I probably didn't miss anything really that great. So that was part of it. I just was like, and as I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so she has ads. This is like the first time I've heard her show. And so I was and what gets me is I think if these had been 15 second, I think it still would have bugged me because it was like, here's an ad, here's another ad, and one more just for fun. It wasn't so much the time. It's just like my brain keeps going, oh, and I bet she's done now. And then she wasn't. And so I'd go back and then I'd think, okay, I bet she's done. Oh, no, she's not. So I think it was my brain kind of kept going back to check. I don't know. It was just, I just thought for me, I don't know, aside from Joe Rogan and Conan, who I skip, I have my phone start Conan at 7 minutes and it's not long enough because Conan does this thing where if you don't know him and if you don't know that that's his assistant who's been working with him forever, he bashes his staff. It's a kind of a Howard Stern thing where let's make fun of the staff, and it's always inside jokes. So you have no idea what I hate the beginning of Conan's show. I'm like, he does great interviews, but I just want to skip to like the 10-minute mark. Like, please let me know when David Schwimmer starts or whoever it is I'm trying to hear. So,
David says her show. Let me bring that up there. Her show ads are up front, and this is, I think, the debate. If you're going to do ads, this is the debate you have to have with yourself, right? Is to say, okay, I know that the farther I put these ads down in the podcast, the less likely they are to get listened to, and if they're, say, you're using host-read affiliate ads. Well, that directly affects you from the sense of you only get paid when they use the affiliate link, right? Right. So you want those ads as close to this is the thought process that goes on. You want those ads as close to the front as possible to make sure that people do hear them. But based on your story, if I do too many up front, Dave, I start turning people off. Like you're a prime example of somebody coming into a new podcast and I throw 3 ads at you to make sure that you listen to them, and you're like, I'm out. I mean, you don't even, you're like, this is it. I'm done. If you're going to do this to me all the time, I'm out. So it really is, you really got to, when you're thinking about ad placement, you really got to kind of think like, how many is enough? How many will my audience tolerate? Are they host read or programmatic where we're getting them from somebody else and I don't know who they're going to be?
Here's another weird part, and I don't know that I would think this if it was Brian, the podcaster in the basement. She made $200,000 an episode on The Big Bang Theory. So there's a part of me going, seriously? You need another ad like you need the extra $800? I'm like, come on. So I don't know that I would think about that from
that may be contractual though. Listen, she's not doing her own podcast, right? she's working with a company who's doing the podcast for her, and maybe they've guaranteed her a certain amount, and so to get that certain amount, that company needs to. They've done the math.
Well, that's the thing. I will put a link to this in the show notes.
You can't do a podcast and lose money. So they're going to put the ads in to get paid. I
was inspired to write a blog post about this. And the thing that got me is I said when I went to press fast forward for the third ad roll, instead of pressing fast forward, I pressed stop because I'd had enough. But here's a graph from Jacob's Media. When they got to like, why are people leaving? When they got to the green section, I don't know why they have different colors. 31% of the people left radio because there were too many commercials. And I was like, hey, just for the record. And then I go in here and they say in this one article I found 40 to 80% are the fill rates. So it's not like everybody's like just, holy cow, we've got too many ads and not enough spots. And I also pointed out that ever so slightly, CPM, so that's the thing that works for really big shows, has gone down ever so slightly. But then I came down here and, you'll hear this like everybody added programmatic advertising, which could be one of the reasons why the price of ads are going down, because now everybody can have ads. And you can see where in this one service I'm using, I had 150 downloads and I made 54 cents. So that calculates to 0.0036 cents a download. If I had 300 downloads, I'd make $1.08. Now, fast forward to the future of podcasting, which is a show I do with Daniel, and we had somebody donate 100,000 sats, which in English is, once I split it with Daniel, $14.22. And the thing is, that show has less than 2,000 downloads total, and that boost was for one episode, and that equals $14.22 divided by 113 downloads for that episode is $126 CPM. And I went, that's a heck of a lot better than 22. Now, granted, that's a whole, that's a show about kind of the whole crypto thing. So we're going to get more of those. But it was one of those things where I was like, to me, it was, I think the biggest thing was there were too many, not so much the ads, although at the beginning, that's the other thing that got me is by the time I got to 30% through her show, and I need to go back and listen again and listen to the whole thing to find out what the total is, because it is a 2-hour-long episode. But by the time you got to the 30-minute mark, it was down to 22%. So she'd gone from 34% at 13. At 30 minutes, it was 22. But it was really annoying because they'd get into a good conversation, and then, bam, she's got to start talking about, whatever, and I was like, ugh. So it was just driving me nuts. So I was inspired to go start a blog post, and, then I explained how Jen Briney, in fact, let me go get this link and put this in the show notes. Jim, I double dog dare you to listen to this episode. Jen Briney did an episode. Now, if you're not familiar with Jen, she does Congressional Dish, but she did a thing on the Twitter files. Have you heard of the Twitter files?
I've heard of them. Yes.
And without putting on tinfoil hats and starting a political discussion, she has tape from C-SPAN of a high-up government official in the United States explaining that, we propagandize our own citizens. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, and it's like, yep, here's the guy who was the head of such and such, and he says that he spreads propaganda. And I was like, and it's in the Twitter files. And I was just like, why isn't this on the news? So I told people, I'm like, all right. And it was interesting because Jen, who was normally not a tinfoil hat person, because as soon as I heard this episode, I ran to Venmo because Jen doesn't have her show set up for the whole boostagrams and stuff. Found her Venmo and sent her an extra $20 because I send her $15 a month anyway via check. But that was one, and I explained that this is kind of the digital way of going, bravo! Like, I want to give more. Why do people do standing ovations? It's a way of saying, no, not only was this good, I'm going to stand up for you, and regardless of the fact that I've been sitting on my butt for a 2-hour play and I really need to stand up, I'm going to stand up anyway. But it's interesting, and Jim is thirsty, so we will.
I've run out of coffee. This coffee, by the way, brought to you by
Yeah, wouldn't that be it? Athletic Greens brings you this coffee. That's why Jim's so hyper this morning.
Let me drink this delicious. Hold on, my hands covered this delicious coffee. I just spilled it all over myself.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, speaking of advertising, let's take this time to thank our awesome supporters. If you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/support, that would be, we really do appreciate that. We have lost a few awesome supporters due to this lovely, everybody losing their job thing. So if you still have a job, do consider going to askthepodcastcoach.com/support. Another way you can support us is if you need a website for your podcast and you don't want to go with Mark, why not go with Mark? But if you need a budget thing, go to trypodpage.com. That's my affiliate link for that. And if you need more Jim Collison, and hey, you know what? We missed him last week. You could have gone over to theaverageguy.tv and, gotten your fix of Jim. And if you need to start a podcast or if you need to grow a podcast, check out the schoolofpodcasting.com. We've got courses, we've got coaching, we've got community and unlimited one-on-one coaching. And nobody believes that. That's my biggest problem. I'm having people like, wait, so I can order another session even though I just had one? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. If you'd like to, again, be an awesome supporter, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/support. So we did something at the 4-minute mark. And now we're almost at an hour. But here's the thing. We're advertising free for the rest. So there we go. Kyle says, Athletic Greens owes us $100. I have bought things. Have you bought something that you...
No. Do you have an affiliate link for them, for Athletic Greens?
I don't think I do. I think they are definitely a company.
That stuff looks awful. I've watched YouTubers advertise it and they're like, here, drink this green stuff. I know it's good for you, but it tastes awful. And I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna.
I have a sponsorship for my weight loss show, and it's sad, I don't remember the name of my sponsor, but they somehow put honey in it. So about the time you go, there's a little bit of sweetness to come in and help you out.
Lucky Charms. I'm drinking Lucky Charms. That's my Athletic Greens.
I'm trying to think of something I bought from a podcast. That's great because I haven't bought a mattress or razors.
A lot of the things we do here are slow burn advertising. So we're talking about the Roadcaster. I'm like, because of all the conversations that go on about this crazy Roadcaster and Roadcaster 2, right? Are those the right names? Okay. So that's slow burn, right? That's just like influence in the background. That is, those are the kinds of things that get you thinking about. It's just constantly there. It's just been, I think we do way more of that. I mean, we spent a whole half an hour talking about various platforms like StreamYard or Zencaster or whatever, right? Fill in the blank. I think that's slow burn advertising because that's products you don't see, that's not one of those things all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, no, they said it, I'm going to go buy it, right? Well, it's slow burn.
In the book, Profit from Your Podcast, Proven Strategies to Turn Listeners into a Livelihood, I talk about how LegalZoom had started podcasting on the Earwolf network or something like that. And after about a month, they're like, yeah, this isn't working. We're going to, sorry, but like, no, we're pulling it, no more. And then about halfway through the next month, it started taking off. They're like, put it back. So it is a slow, the worst thing, if you are doing advertising and you have somebody that's like, how much is it again? Could we do one episode? That is not the person you want. Because as Jim was saying, it's kind of in some cases, they want to keep your brand in front of people, that kind of thing. So they just want to get their name out there.
Well, like you said with LegalZoom, sometimes it takes time. I think we feel like, and listen, your regular listeners are going to they're going to get sick of it, and they're probably not going to buy it. But you're going to get some fringe listeners who've heard that for the very first time, and then go, "Oh yeah, maybe I should." I've been using Nespresso as an affiliate sponsor for Home Gadget Geeks. And I have a code that I throw out there. And I thought, nobody will do this. 4 or 5 weeks in, I got somebody to. And I'm going to keep, it just takes time, right? Not everybody listens to your podcast the day you release it. And so eventually somebody goes, yeah, I'm tired of drinking this nasty coffee. I'm going to go. Jim said, use Nespresso, right? I'm going to give that thing a try. So I think you got to kind of stick with it too. You got to keep it the forefront. You got to live, you kind of got to live the advertising.
And I think the best strategy for this is Jordan Harbinger does a really cool thing where jordanharbinger.com/deals. And what he does is every time he gets an advertiser, he basically puts it on this /deals page. So when you go here, it's like the Jordan Harbinger Mall.
Yeah.
And it's all of his sponsors in one place. The one thing I haven't seen yet, I've heard him talk about this. There they are, Athletic Greens and Audible.
And Audible.
Yeah.
Where's HelloFresh? I'm sure that's got to be in there too.
Yeah. There we go. Actually, I bought this, Bio-Optimizers. I bought that because of Jordan Harbinger.
Okay.
It's in my refrigerator as we speak.
Is it bio-optimizing you?
It is. I am bio-optimized. But the thing that apparently in here, and I don't see it yet. Well, he's had a lot of sponsors.
I think I'm going to do this. I like this idea. I thought about this in the past. It's just a lot of work to keep it up. But
because here's what it does is he'll talk about, I could talk about Sweetwater, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/Sweetwater. And then I talk about the School of Podcasting and I use the blah, blah, blah. But if you have one link to remember, and he always like, hey, to support the show, or support the people that support us by going to jordanharbinger.com/deals. So you might be going there to get some Athletic Greens. Man, they really owe me some money this week. And end up buying a purple mattress, right? Because you're like, oh, I didn't realize. Look at this. I got a coupon code for a, $100
eat HelloFresh on your purple mattress.
That's right.
And then follow it with some Athletic Greens.
Yes. What I was looking for, because, everything now has AI in it, he has somehow hooked up some sort of smart AI search to help you search through the sponsors. So I didn't see that there on that page, but he's like, they're working on it. So maybe he hasn't rolled that out, but he's going to tie AI into to his ads page. So kind of cool.
Which is really just an algorithm. Let's just be really clear. That's not really AI. It's not really.
Yeah.
It's just search, friends. It's just search. So anyways.
Just to tie into the last thing we were talking about, somebody in Reddit said, Spreaker versus Acast for monetization thing. Just realize that when you hear these Spreaker versus Acast things, or anybody that says I can make money from day one, it's 0.00, in this case, 36 cents per download. So times that by whatever you got, and you're going to find out it's like $1.08 per episode. And what's weird is I see people switching from Acast to Spreaker. So instead of 0.0036, it's 0.0038. And I'm like, you do that's like an extra quarter by the end of the year. And not that I'm anti-ad. I should say that up front. I'm not anti-ad. In the case of Mayim's case, I just didn't like the way she was using them. And in the case of this whole programmatic thing, look, you do you. I'm just not interrupting my audience for, 13 cents an episode. I'm just like, I'll wait till I get that. And that's where that kind of stuff works for the people that have 10,000 downloads an episode, because they'll throw two of those together and they make $40 or something like that. So I'm not anti-ad. I'm just, so we'll switch over to RSS, because that's always fun. But it's a good one to talk about. Again, just talking about switching from one host to the next. I recently did a rebrand of my podcast, which, by the way, Monday show, School of Podcasting, we're talking about when do I rebrand it and how do I do it. I did a rebrand of my podcast and changed the name of it altogether. So it used to be Ask the Podcast Coach. Now it's called Your Podcast Questions Answered, something like that. However, my RSS feed URL still has the name of the old podcast. So in this case, he didn't change hosts. He didn't go, I take that back. He didn't go from Captivate to Buzzsprout. He's on the same thing. He just rebranded it. He says, my RSS feed still has the name of the old podcast. I uploaded everything through Acast and was informed by their customer service that the URL doesn't actually matter for SEO purposes, and it's nothing to worry about. I'm not the most savvy in this area, so I wanted to ask if anyone could give me some better insight into this. So, Jim, what's one of your favorite podcasts that you listen to?
I mentioned it earlier, Windows Weekly.
Great. And what's their feed?
I have no idea.
Exactly.
Don't care, actually.
Yeah. So this is one I like to point out, that feeds are not made for humans. They're made for apps. So it's Apple Podcasts, it's Overcast, it's whatever, Pocket Casts. That's what is looking at that URL, not people. And the other thing, because I've had people say that Google does index RSS feeds, and I think the only time you can force them to show up is if you put something in quotation marks. And I don't know about you, I haven't quotation marked search anything since probably, Hotbot or something like that. Usually, things come up. And so the reason I say Google doesn't index these is because if you take your feed and throw it in Google, you will get a face full of code. And being that Google wants you to have a good experience, they're not going to go, hey, here's an RSS feed that has the word you're looking for. And when you click on that, you're going to get a bunch of code. So yeah, so in this case, the Acast person was correct. Especially when it comes to SEO, your feed doesn't make a difference at all. I know for years back in the day, when I had the Musician's Cooler, I'd put it in FeedBurner, and I forget what the typo was. I think it was Musician Cooler instead of Musicians. And I was at the time, I was like, you know what, who cares? And nobody ever said to me, hey, do you know your feed it's missing the S? So yeah, it's always interesting how people obsess over these little things, and none of them have anything to do with, like actual growing your audience. I mean, I guess SEO would if it did, but it doesn't. And that's also probably the same person that has their title as, episode 15 or something. I'm like, that's where SEO comes into play with your title. Make sure those are things that you want to click on, because they're going to see you before they hear you. So have good artwork, have a good title of your show, and then have good titles for your episode. And those three things together should all push the person to clicking listen or subscribe or something like that. So how do you folks handle it when someone asks about your cast or why you have so much audio equipment? I'm not talking self-promotion, but just in day-to-day with people you meet, I find myself really sheepish about it and don't really want to talk about it for fear of being someone who is always talking about their podcast. And so my answer to this guy is, what's wrong with being the guy who is always talking about his podcast? Because hello, it's like it's not a joke, but it was true. I was at an event with my ex-wife. She was a nurse, so it's a bunch of doctors and nurses, and I have nothing to say because they have their own little language. And some guy walks up and says, hey, are you the podcast guy? And she rolled her eyes and looked at me and said, I'll see you in 20 minutes. Because she knew, like, oh my God, you poked the bear. You poked the bear. Yeah. He's not going to shut up for 20 minutes. So I am the guy that talks about his podcast all the time. And when I got into the Hall of Fame, my one cousin said, okay, I'm going to ask the question that nobody's going to ask. And I go, what's that? He goes, what the hell's a podcast? So do you run into this at all?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
you do it for work.
I do. And listen, I have, some of my coworkers like to make fun. Some of them like to make fun of it because, I'm out in front all the time. I get emails from listeners all the time. We have these things coming in. And so I say embrace it to your level of comfort. If it makes you uncomfortable, do some things to avoid the conversation. If you're comfortable with it, just embrace it for what it is. It's not going to last forever. Like this isn't like these things. These things too shall pass, and we'll move on to at some point, Dave. I hope we'll move on.
10 years we've been doing this.
This show.
I had to make a new episode, and when I make an episode, I have a folder called podcasts.
Yeah,
and there I have a folder called Ask the Podcast Coach. In that folder, I have production, episodes, and finish. So in the episodes folder, I went in today and made one 04/08/23, and I had to go into the 2023 folder to do that. Oh. And when I saw the 23 folder, I saw at the top of the list was the 2013 folder.
Oh wow!
And I'm
like, that makes sense. That makes sense. We did it all the way through the pandemic, which was 10 years. I felt like. Yeah. I just embrace it. And then, sometimes, and Kyle mentions, he's a real person, has interests besides podcasting. Yeah. I was just on a call with it was an introductory call. One of our coaches has written a book, and so we were just chatting. We spent the first 15 minutes talking about solar power, which I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always have to be about podcasting, but then we spent some time talking. But Dave, when you run into somebody who's interested in the conversation, and then I talked to some people who you can tell in the first 2 minutes, like, yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere. Like, right. Let's just be really, really clear. They're not that interested.
Like my sister-in-law, if you talk to her for longer than 20 minutes, she has two topics. One is she's a school teacher, so she's going to tell you about some horrendous second grader, or B, she's going to talk about some sort of food that she ate at some place she went to. Like, that's just, it's just her. Mm-hmm. My brother is going to have a conversation about typewriters. My brother fixes and sells old typewriters, and it's okay, but that's his thing. That's his jam. And so I'm with you. New parents will talk about their kids a lot, or grandkids, or whatever. We all talk about whatever. And I don't know. I'm curious. I wish this was a real person, because I'm like, why do you feel weird talking about your podcast?
It makes people uncomfortable, though. That kind of attention sometimes makes people uncomfortable, and that's okay. Like, go with what no one's holding you to this. You go with what you're comfortable with,
right?
And don't feel like you got to fit into somebody else's mold, right? You fit into your mold.
That's it. I think he said he has a bunch of microphones in his background.
Yeah.
And so somebody at his job was like, why do you have so many microphones? And then you just say, because I'm a podcaster.
Yeah.
I mean, I have at least 5 guitars, and if I had them all in one room, somebody walk in and go, how many of these can you play at one time? I'd be like, 1. But
I had a friend at work. I say on Home Gadget Geeks, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios. And he heard that. He was like, studios? Like, you have a studio in your house? It's not really. I'm like, well, I mean, it's not really. It's my studio. It's what I consider to be a studio. It's not your definition of a radio studio is the way you know studios to be. But he thought that was the most hilarious thing in the world. Not hilarious in a good way. He was absolutely making fun of me, right? And I said, did I change? No, I still say the AverageGuy.tv studios, because it's a branding thing. Like, I want people to think of that. Like, oh yeah, he's in a studio, right? And it changes from time to time, but for the most part, it's the same place. So yes, you're going to get those kind of people who are going to be like, seriously, dude, are you trying to be more than you actually are? Yeah, I am actually. Yes, it's called branding.
Yes. DR says maybe they feel salesy. Yeah. I get that. I always tell people, to get over the, like, I don't want to feel like a salesman. Does your podcast help people? And almost all of them, it does. I'm like, okay, so you're not selling people, you're helping people. And that's sometimes not as easy to get over as it sounds. To me, I just was like, don't care what other people think, because if you do, man, your life's going to be horrible.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to care. I mean, I think sometimes it's hard to say just don't, because it is. Like, it hurts,
I care what my boss thinks,
Yeah. Well, or I like to say use that as fuel for good for you. Like, how do I take somebody's like, this buddy at work who is like, seriously, the AverageGuy.tv studios, you dork, take that as fuel and be like, okay, I'm going to make this studio the best it can possibly be. And by the way, since I've done all that, I've created thousands of podcasts for Gallup. That was early. In this when I first started doing it. And I've been doing it for 10 years at Gallup too. So, use it as some fuel, like, not in a bad way. Don't be bitter, but take it. I always like to say a little chip on your shoulder, right? That you're just like, okay, I'm going to use this to motivate me to do better every day.
Kevin Hart the comedian had so many, just the door slammed and he'd have an opportunity at the last minute. They'd pull the rug out from under him. And every time what I feel would have normally crushed somebody, he was like, all right, I'm going to be so funny. You can't ignore me. Yeah. That was his kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
listen, that's a tough thing to do, because it's a fine line between drive and bitterness. right, in those two. And you can use it as I'm never gonna, I hate this, I'm negative, drive yourself into the ground, right? Or you can use it as motivation to say, well, okay, and not be bitter about them, but I'm going to take that naysay and I'm going to turn it into positive for good. And I'm going to show them. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that can be very motivating. And so if you're in that situation again, but there's a fine line there between drive and bitterness. And I think you have to be careful not to become bitter, but to use it as drive. Yeah,
absolutely. I have a problem that I can't, it's something I've run across that I'm like, So here it is.
Take care of it.
I have a member of the School of Podcasting who lives in the middle of Washington, apparently surrounded by trees, and basically the internet there is very, very spotty at best. Like she tried Squadcast, and her bandwidth apparently is not fast enough to support Squadcast uploading things in the background. So we were talking on Zoom, and even with that, she was occasionally kind of stretching out. So I told her, I said, well, what you could do is if and her audience isn't very technical as well, they're also probably out in the middle. It's about the horse industry and things like that. And I said, well, you could connect on Zoom because that's what your audience is used to. Maybe have them use earbuds and use those earbuds. I said, that's going to be better than a speakerphone or the phone or the camera phone, things like that. I'm like, we're looking for the better of the worst. And so she did that, and she's like, yeah, I really don't like the way it sounds. And it's like, because there are things like I remember when Elsie from Libsyn didn't have the internet, she would record herself and they would talk on the phone, and she would record her side of the conversation. They would do something like 3, 2, 1, and then it would make it a little easier to sync the two together. But if you're dealing with people that aren't that technical, how do you tell somebody open up QuickTime and hit record? And then again, you're going to end up with them recording who knows what microphone. And I was like, I've never run into, and it's one of those things you kind of, obviously you take for granted that if you live in some sort of city that has decent internet, you forget all the people out in the middle of the country that don't. And I'm not sure, can you think of any, because when she said Squadcast, her internet wasn't fast enough for Squadcast to, I guess, upload it in the background and have it
running video too.
That's a good question. I don't think, Squadcast has video. You can turn it off. Yeah. So I would do that. But I don't think she was recording it. I think she was just doing audio.
Dave, I think there's just times where the physical limitations are just too much to overcome. I mean, if you can't use Skynet, whatever Elon is launching into the...
and they don't have that, whatever that dish thing is that people. Yeah. Because I was, she brought it up on the School of Podcasting group coaching, and we have a guy that's in Louisiana who's in the middle of nowhere, and he got very lucky because he has Skynet or whatever dish world.
Skynet for sure. I mean, Elon is the guy who's going to be the evil guy in the movie who,
right.
or the robots kill us all.
Right.
So physical limitations, right? At some point, you just can't put that square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work. So in a case like this, and I know like you go to town. Like go into town.
That's what I asked her. I said,
"Is there studio space or something along those lines?"
Because I did a group coaching call when I drove to Nashville from a McDonald's. Then that's when it dawned on me. Oh, that would work because you've got Wi-Fi, but now you're in a McDonald's, so you're going to have some background noise. And
I did a podcast with you. I was out in Portland seeing my sister, and she has terrible internet. So I drove and I sat outside in my car with a headset and connected to their Wi-Fi. Right, made that. Today, I would just make my phone a hotspot because it's ultra wide 5G, and so I would find a spot in town where the ultra wide is there, and we'd have no problems. But I think there's go into town, see if you can rent a spot, see if you can find a place where you can do it. Do it out of your car, maybe do it out of the horse trailer. I mean, build a little studio in the horse trailer, or go see it. And it's not always possible, but go see these people if they can do a road trip, take a studio, do a in person. That's always a cool kind of thing if you can
do them in person.
Do them in person. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I was coming up against kind of what you were saying is there are times when you're like, okay, here are options. Option 1, nope. Option 2, nope. Option 3, nope. Option 4, Option 5, and they go, well, yeah, but it's not going to sound good. And I'm like, you don't. You kind of go.
Maybe it's not possible.
Yeah, it's just one of those things I never think about it, and I always say, well, to start a podcast, you need a microphone and the internet, and I always assume everybody has the internet, and it's the United States is big, and there are parts of it that haven't been wired yet. And then her other problem was she's right across the street from some sort of naval base or some sort of military base.
Oh yeah.
And because of that, like, she's not really part of a city or something. It's some weird thing where being close to that, I'm like, well, can't you like park in their parking lot? I bet they have Wi-Fi. So it was just something that I was like, I have not run into that one before.
Yeah, you're going to need to be creative, right? You're going to have to really be creative on this thing and put up with some, you put up with some things that aren't normal for people. A mobile studio may be one of those, a trailer where you turn it into a mobile studio and you hijack somebody's Wi-Fi or whatever, which isn't a great idea, but it may take going somewhere where you can get decent Wi-Fi to be able to kind of pull. How willing, this is the thing. I think sometimes, Dave, you say, how willing are you? You want to do this podcasting stuff bad, right? Yeah, I want to make it work. Then you're like, well, you're going to need to spend a few dollars to do it. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't. It's not that bad. Still want it to be free. You're like, well, it'd be like, I love to ski. I loved to ski with a D. I don't ski anymore because I'm afraid if I fall, I'll never walk again. Things don't heal.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Yeah.
Things don't heal as fast as they used to.
No, they don't.
Right. But I love to ski, and it'd be a lot like skiing and saying, yeah, but I don't want to pay for lift tickets are expensive. Yes, they are. And by the way, there's no other way to get up the hill. Like, you're going to spend $200 a day easily on a lift ticket. You're going to spend $100 if you're going to buy lunch at the lodge. So there's that pushback. Like, I want to do this, but I just don't want to make the investment. Well, okay, it's going to hold you back a little bit, and you're going to need to come up with a few dollars if you want to make this work, especially if you live out in the country and you don't have access to Skynet. So
that's it. Coach Dave says, I'm adding hijacking of Wi-Fi to my new podcaster skill set.
If you can get away with it, I guess it's okay.
Yeah. DR is asking about the brown background that we have, or in some cases, the blue background, or in some cases, it's the hot seat.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. These are, it's just an image. Is it an overlay? It is. What do they call it it's a background in StreamYard. Yeah. And I'm assuming it's just, your typical kind of YouTube sized thing. And then it took me a while to figure out where to put the words and things like that, so they weren't covering us. And then, like, if we have a third person, the whole thing goes out the window. But
sort of. Like, the third person comes in, you still see the episode, you still see the Ask the Podcast Coach. So
right.
Now this goes away. The title up top goes away. You could come up with another background, Dave, that would it wouldn't dynamically change. You would need to manually, but you could have a background that's all of these that are made for three people.
Right.
And things would slide around. I mean, you could do that. It's a little bit of work, but you can do it.
And if I remove Jim for a half a second, that puts me on that. That doesn't work. Anyway, behind us, this is a 4, that's a 3, and that's a 1. So we can't see it, but it actually has very large numbers saying 4, 3, 1 behind us. Right. Why I do that? Because you'll never see it. Maybe if we have 3 people, but it's there behind it. And then what I did in Canva was I have all this laid out, and then I just took an element, I believe is what it's called, and I made it kind of, originally it was the blue from the blue in the podcast coach, and I did that. And then today I was like, let's change it up. And so I made it brown because that's, I think if I remember right, part of the gray from the School of Podcasting logo or something like that. But yeah, you can do it. Canva is amazing. And there's more stuff you can do with that I never knew of. But
they're doing the visual art, the AI art now too, where you can put text in and it'll make some art for you.
Yeah, I don't have it ready to go. I paid somebody $27 to where I gave them 20 pictures of my face. So I went to all these, pictures on Facebook and where people have me speaking or whatever. And I think they made like 20 pictures of me. And out of those, I'm going to say 3 are usable. There's one where I look very cartoonish. And what I love is my front teeth are crooked. They kind of, instead of being straight down, they kind of do this. And what I love is they straightened these teeth and made the other ones crooked. And I'm like, okay, because it would look weird if Dave's teeth weren't crooked because my teeth are crooked. But it was
in the text. You should say with straight teeth type deal. So
I should have,
very white straight teeth. You don't get any more American than super straight, super white teeth. That's an American thing. That's an American thing for sure.
Yeah, I need to get some. I just need to get my teeth whitened, basically. I keep buying different, every toothpaste. You ever notice that every toothpaste, whitening?
It's whitening? It doesn't work.
And it doesn't. I'm like, it's still just as
It doesn't help me that I drink like 8 gallons of coffee a day. So like as much as I did, I'd have to I've got these retainers that are, Visalines. And if I put those in and drink coffee, it does things. But I don't want, it's like, I don't want to, it's not that worth it to me. So.
Yeah, that's what I want to, I'm actually looking into that.
Those pictures look a little creepy, though? I mean,
they are creepy. The eyes especially get really
I'm creeped out by them, especially the really good ones. Midjourney, I think, is the one that does really photorealistic AI images. And I look at some of them and I kind of go, that is it. When it's somebody else, it's not as bad. But when it's me, I was like, yeah, I don't want any of those. Like I've never looked that good. I don't ever want to look that good. Like the skin is perfect. And you're like, yeah, no, let's not do that kind of thing. They're creepy. They are absolutely creepy.
It's very strange. And I thought I had them here. I guess I don't. I'll have those ready for next week, but it was just one of those things where I was like, one of the things we could look at, how are we doing on time? Perfect. Is I swear during the making of this episode, we've probably had at least 2, probably 3 artificial intelligent transcription services for podcasters launch.
Yeah.
I mean, every time you turn around, there's another one.
Yeah.
And so Capsho was the first one. I had, Dee on my last episode because she was talking about how she kind of had to mentally handle that. Like, what do you do when this big behemoth comes out in your space? And I know Colby from Swellai. That's a pretty cool one. But this one is on
Capsho. Capsho's another one.
Yeah, Capsho was the first one, and this is Castmagic. It is an AppSumo deal, of course. And so what's interesting about it is you upload it, you can have different shows. I made a mistake here. This was a profit from your podcast episode, but I uploaded it under Ask the Podcast Coach. So one of the things here actually says on Ask the Podcast Coach. But what's interesting is you get your typical, transcription kind of thing, and you can go in here and it'll just say speaker A. And when I click here, I can say, oh, that's me. And like you can see, it remembers who the speakers were. Apparently, this was from a couple weeks ago. Yeah, so here's Michelle, and then you got me, and then now Jim, you'll be added to this. But what's interesting is when you go to the AI content, it gives you 10 titles, and I think I picked this one if I remember right. Something about investigating things. It gives you keywords, speaker bios, which actually I read this and I was like, you know what? That's pretty straight on for Michelle. It gives you an introduction. This one on this episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. Well, that's because I uploaded it under the wrong podcast. Then they give you a timestamped overview, questions and answers, added. It slices, it dices, it key topics and bullet points. Clip finder. So if you're looking for quotes, so for those of you that like audiograms, that's the thing I always say about audiograms is the time it takes to make them and the return on investment. Yeah. If you need a real script, if you need a LinkedIn post, if you need a newsletter.
Hold on. Before you go any farther, go back up to the really script. I always love how they always start it with
hey guys. Yeah.
Like that somehow turns it into a conversation. If I just put "hey guys" in front of the Magna Carta, then it's just a conversation we were having.
Hey guys, 407 years ago, our forefathers. Yes,
exactly.
Well, I mean, but you
is
get
that
the point.
AI? I question that.
Yeah, I mean, it just tweet threads. It's like $39. I need it while I'm here. Here's my good friend.
One time, $30.
One-time fee. Yeah, cast. Here it is, Castmagic. So let me throw this in the thing. But I just every time I turn around, I'm like, another one. In fact, PodSqueeze approached me this week, and I was like, dude, how are you different? And he's like, we all have our own unique stuff and blah blah blah.
They do. Listen, we're in this realm of, or we're in this time of all these, because OpenAI has, basically allowed all these partnerships through an API to Chat GPT. Basically, is the way it's working. Not in all cases, but let's just say that's the way it is for now. This will get maybe I'll get my nerd on a little bit here. So because they've
Oh, he's been waiting for this. It's time for
It's been 2 weeks.
Get his nerd on.
So this has opened up this whole world, and of course, Chat GBT 4 has been released, and I think we're going to see some even more innovation around this. Everybody's jumping on that bandwagon to get in there. So I think we're going to see this proliferation of new companies, new offerings. But they always go, we're the very early stages of the Gartner hype cycle, right? Or the hype cycle. And so we're climbing that mountain. I think we'll probably climb it for the rest of the year. Those companies will burn out, flame out. It won't work. They won't be able to make it work, whatever. They'll consolidate. Things will go on. By this time next year, there'll be a few left. So just be careful. If you're buying this kinds of software, if you're getting into this kind of thing, odds are they won't make it. I just want to be honest with you. Yeah. They probably won't make it. So just have a couple in this cycle. Be looking at a couple of these things. Have a few on backup. Maybe Swell's a good one. I use Otter.ai. They were early to this thing, right? Jasper's another one of those companies. Will Jasper make it? Who knows, right? They look good in the beginning, but now their $100 plan doesn't look as good as the $20 plan that I can buy from OpenAI, right? So all those things being said, we're in that climb on the hype cycle. Just don't be surprised a year from now if half of them are gone, right? If they just don't make it. We're going to go. This is a lot like when everybody started offering free hosting back when, that company that starts with an A that I won't say the name.
Right. Spotify for podcasters.
And then everybody started offering all this free. Here's how we're going to, well, most of that stuff's gone. Right. So just don't be surprised. There you go.
Yeah. What I love about this is, in theory, yeah. Okay. So let me come back. You mentioned that we're not going to go on a Dave rant here, but I just think it's funny when it comes to the free hosting is, one is called Red Circle, and Red Circle used to have they just rebranded their front page, grow and monetize, dynamic insertion, yada, yada, yada. And it used to be about here. There'd be a button like click here for free, right? It was all about free. In fact, if I go to their pricing plan, they don't even mention the free plan until you scroll down and go, oh, wait a minute, there is a free plan. Yeah. So it's just one of those where it's like, I've always said free is not a good business model. I mentioned it last week, one of my favorite apps I was using. And what they did, in my opinion, because, man, they had service like nobody's business. They had a great product. It was called Volley. And they made this free version. And they said, okay, everybody who's using the free version, you're never going to have to pay for this. And then we're going to come up with these new features, and you're going to have to pay for them. And we're like, great. So then they came out with all the stuff you had to pay for, and we all went, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it. Okay, good. I'm just going to stay on the free program. I think that's what killed them. So, yeah, Red Circle is not – I always tell people, the person's like, I have to go with free. And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, you don't need a podcast. You need a job. But if you need free, go with Red Circle. It's so much better than the artist formerly known as Anchor. So
And they have all been monkeying with their plans. Spreaker has gone through, I think, 2 or 3 different renditions in the last couple of years of the way they support their plans, and they have a new one. They have a new one now that you have to go through. I think Red Circle is going to go through the same kind of evolution, and eventually they probably will stop doing free plans altogether. Yeah. That's all. Listen, this is where it always ends. Don't be surprised if you're putting customers on free plans or you're on a free plan itself. It too shall pass, and it will stop being free at some point. It just is, or it'll change. Or I think even in Anchor's case, it'll get different, right? They'll find a way to monetize you. Maybe they're already doing that now, but so we go through this all the time. Just like free hosting is consolidated down, folks are dropping out. I a couple years ago, I went and got them all and started putting half of them are gone. Like that link that I used to have, like I use raindrop.io to track all of my links, my smart links, and it used to be a full page and now it's half the page.
Yeah,
they've gone out of business.
Yeah, I forget the one. It's hard to say but I just remember they didn't do redirects and it was free. So when they went out of business, everybody's like, "How do I get my podcast off of here?" I'm like, "Yeah." And you can't contact support because their support was awful when they were in business, and now they're out of business. I'm like, so.
Well, Larry, hold on, Larry. We gotta comment on this. So Larry says YouTube does this free hosting pretty well, and they've managed to survive. That's because you are on YouTube. You're paying for this with their advertising. They're making money off of you,
right?
You know that, right? I mean, you're the product. So, I mean, it's okay. It works. It works for a lot of people until it doesn't. Let me give you an example. So on YouTube, most people if you try to use the standard YouTube experience today with ads, it's horrible. So they've hijacked you, or they now using methods of extortion. They're making you pay to get rid of the ads. Who are they paying? You? No, you're paying them. Now, in theory, you're supposed to get some of that money and some of those kinds of things, but you're not. I mean, you're the product on YouTube. I hope you guys know that, right? That Google is making tons of money off of you for you making you're doing all the work. They're doing none of it. They're making billions of dollars. So that's that model,
I'm completely fascinated. We have somebody in our chat room, and you, at least from StreamYard, I can't kick people out. I'm like, that's weird. And so I went over to YouTube, and I don't see their. I don't. Maybe
that's Twitch.
That's why.
It's Twitch.
That's why. Yeah,
just leave it. Twitch. Yeah. Nobody's listening to it.
Attention to them. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What's interesting? Larry says here, ask Super Joe Pardo how used he feels. Holy cow! That guy. Do you know Super Joe Pardo? Have you ever been to his event?
Super Joe. Yeah.
Super Joe is like, he's just such a nice guy, and I'm looking forward to his event. He's finally going back to doing it in person. But this guy gets the most brutal comments, like, "Super Joe, you suck. You should stop."
Oh yeah,
blah, blah, like, and he just puts them up. YouTube, "Hey, thanks so much for watching."
Yeah, YouTube culture is horrible.
Yeah,
it is just terrible. Yeah, and Larry says creators make a lot of money. They do. There's a few who make the percentage of creators who make a lot of money versus the percentage of creators who don't is gigantic, right? Very small percentage. Does that mean you shouldn't use it? No. I mean, if you're comfortable, I use it. I like it. I just go in eyes wide open, friends, on all these things that you're doing. And if it's working for you, just do it, right? You don't have to listen to me. I still use it. I just know what I'm getting into when I get there.
Yeah. So that eventually, if they ever pull something or go out of business or whatever, you go, yeah, it's a free thing. What do you expect? So like when Volley went out of business, I was kind of like, and I was like, I was more mad at myself because I built something on a free platform. I was like, I went against my own advice. I'm like, you idiot. And I believed in, and I still do. The guy was super nice. He had a great track record. He'd taken multiple companies and sold them. And I was like, all right, I'm putting all my faith in Josh. And Josh is a great guy. But in this case, in this time, in this environment, it didn't work. And he was like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, why did I do this on a free thing? So,
well, you know what's going to happen at YouTube again? They've done this once, actually twice. There's going to be a haircut. There's going to be a day when YouTube goes, man, we're paying out too much money. And because of the terms and conditions that YouTube has, as a content creator, you have zero rights on YouTube. Zero. They can give you copyright strikes. You have very little things you can do about it. There's really no way. There's no governing board. There's no one to keep track of YouTube and what they're doing. One day they'll come down and say, you know what? We're giving out too much money. I mean, they're not going to say it this way. They're gonna cut that. And what do you have any? I mean, you're going to go to a labor board.
That's it. We're going to unionize, and we're going to go to them and say, we're not going to use your platform. We're going to go to. We're going to shut up and take it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
They can literally do whatever they want. I mean, it's so, you know, that day is coming. I don't know when, and I'm not saying I have any inside information or I know anything, but this is the way it works. They're going to do it again. It's going to be severe. I'm going to leave YouTube.
Oh, I remember the last time they did it.
A couple years ago, right?
And that's when people started going to Patreon. And what's interesting, and from what I hear now, there are people on YouTube that'll be like, you know, and then there was this whole pandemic thing, and they're like, hold on, I'm going to talk about that in the last 30 minutes. You have to get that on Rumble, or you have to sign up, because they don't want to talk about anything remotely controversial, because then they'll lose their YouTube. And the YouTube gets some of the audience, and then they use that audience to go someplace where people have to pay, and that's where you enjoy your 3% that signed up. So, yeah, it is what it is, and like you said, we've seen this before.
Just know, Coach Dave says, "What's your advice?" My advice is be smart and know. Right, you've got to make your own decisions on this kind of thing. If you're going to use YouTube or go to Rumble or go to Galaxy or whatever not Venmo, Vimo? No, what was
Venmo?
No.
Oh, crap.
Now that I've said Venmo, you can't get
Vimeo.
Vimeo, thank you. You've got to, or Twitch, like you've got to do some legwork and figure out that works for you. Just this is so crazy when this happens and people go, you know, they're up in arms and listen, be up in arms if you want to be up in arms about it, but don't be surprised. When these things happen, right? Well, it's the golden age of YouTube. Take advantage of it now. I guess would be my advice. Take advantage of it.
And the beauty of it is if YouTube goes away, kicks him off YouTube.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go? TheAverageGuy.tv. Right. You got to have that in your people's heads so that when something goes up, like, what happened to Dave? I don't know. Let's go to schoolofpodcasting.com and see what it's there. And if it's not there, then you better have an email list, because you own that if you paid for it. Have some way of contacting your people, because, I mean, we go back to the old days of mp3.com. And when that thing got sold and sued and sold and sued and sold and sued, there are people that were using, mp3.com/Dave. They didn't have their own website.
Yeah. And
they were making a living at that. And then it went away, and their audience had no way to contact them, because they never said, oh, I'm over here at theaverageguy.tv and schoolofpodcasting.com and askthepodcastcoach.com. So, Jim, what's coming up on theaverageguy.tv?
So this week, besides having all the Athletic Greens advertising that I have that on there, Aaron Lawrence joins me from 2 weeks ago. With Easter weekend, I took this week off, but Aaron Lawrence joins, and we spent some time talking about some kitchen gadgets. And man, kitchen gear has gotten super good and super complicated. So check it out. It's available today. HomeGadgetGeeks.com.
Nice. And on the School of Podcasting, and I'll talk about this on the episode, like the last 5 episodes have come directly from people asking me a question. Nice. And I've had people say, hey, these have been really good. And I'm like, I thought I was doing this the whole time. But so we're talking about, why do I rebrand? When do I rebrand? And how to do it without shooting myself in the foot. So that will be coming out. And of course, we'll be here every Saturday. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell, that whole 9 yards. And we'll see you next week.